The helicopter touched down in a storm of dust, sirens, and shouted orders. Medics rushed toward the landing pad, expecting another difficult rescue. What they did not expect was the enormous black German shepherd standing over the wounded Navy SEAL, refusing to let anyone come within a single step. The dog didn't bark wildly or attack. He simply stood between the unconscious soldier and the world, his amber eyes following every movement with chilling precision. Every medic who tried to approach stopped the moment the dog lowered his head and growled. Captain Ethan Hayes had survived an explosion during a classified mission, but barely. His uniform was torn, his breathing shallow, and blood soaked through the emergency bandages wrapped around his chest. The helicopter crew shouted that every second mattered, yet no one could reach him. Hospital security arrived carrying restraint poles, convinced they were dealing with a dangerous military animal that had become uncontrollable. "Move that dog," one guard snapped. The helicopter pilot stepped forward. "That isn't just a dog, that's Ranger. He saved the captain 3 times before we even reached the helicopter. If you force him away, someone will get hurt." Nobody listened. One guard advanced anyway. Ranger's growl became so deep that the sound seemed to vibrate through the concrete beneath everyone's boots. The guard froze instinctively. Years of experience told him this animal was not bluffing. Doctors exchanged frustrated glances. "If we wait any longer," one surgeon whispered, "we'll lose the patient." Inside the emergency department, word spread rapidly. Nurses gathered behind the glass doors, watching the unbelievable scene unfold outside. Some shook their heads. Others quietly prayed. Then someone noticed the newest member of the nursing staff walking calmly toward the entrance. Emily Carter had been at the hospital for less than 2 hours. She was fresh from orientation, still carrying paperwork under one arm. Most employees barely knew her name. A senior nurse rushed over. "Stay back," she warned. "Military K9. Extremely dangerous." Emily looked through the glass at the wounded soldier, then at Ranger. Her expression changed, not with fear, with recognition. Without saying a word, she removed her identification badge, placed it on a nearby chair, and began walking toward the landing pad. "What are you doing?" another nurse cried. "Getting myself fired," Emily answered softly. The doctors watched in disbelief as the probationary nurse ignored every order shouted behind her. Security officers tried stopping her. She simply walked around them. The hospital director stormed outside. "Miss Carter, that's a direct order. Stay back." Emily never slowed. Ranger turned toward her immediately. The massive shepherd's ears stood high. Every soldier nearby held their breath. One wrong move would end in tragedy. Emily stopped several feet away. She didn't reach for him. She didn't speak. Instead, she slowly rolled up the sleeve of her left arm. A faded military tattoo appeared beneath the hospital lights. Emily held her arm steady, never breaking eye contact with Ranger. Around her, the emergency team waited in stunned silence, expecting the dog to lunge. Instead, his fierce posture softened, his ears lowered, the growling stopped, and he took one cautious step forward. He sniffed the faded tattoo, then gently pressed his nose against her wrist. A soft whine escaped his throat. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to disappear. Emily whispered, "It's all right, Ranger. I'm here now." The German shepherd looked back at Captain Ethan Hayes, then returned his gaze to Emily as though asking permission. After several endless seconds, he slowly stepped aside. The entire landing pad erupted into action. "Go! Go," a surgeon shouted. Medics rushed to Ethan's side, lifting him carefully onto a stretcher. Ranger stayed close but never interfered again. His eyes remained fixed on Emily, following every movement she made. Inside the trauma bay, alarms echoed through the room. "Blood pressure is crashing. We're losing him. Prepare the operating room." Emily slipped quietly into the crowd of doctors. A senior physician frowned. "You just started today. Stay out of the way." She nodded politely but noticed something everyone else had missed. A small piece of twisted metal protruded beneath Ethan's shoulder blade. The angle was wrong. "If you roll him now," she said calmly, "that fragment will tear the artery." The room fell silent. One surgeon glanced at her with irritation. "And how would you know that?" Emily answered without raising her voice, "Because I've seen the same injury before." The surgeon ignored her warning. "Roll him." Before anyone could move the stretcher, Ranger barked sharply from the doorway. Everyone froze. Emily stepped closer, studying Ethan's wounds for only a second. "The explosion came from his left side," she said. "The shrapnel traveled downward, not across. He's bleeding internally because it's holding the artery closed." The chief trauma surgeon hesitated. What if she's right? Portable imaging equipment arrived moments later. The scan appeared on the monitor. Nobody spoke. The metal fragment sat exactly where Emily had predicted, barely touching a major artery. One careless movement would have killed Ethan instantly. The chief surgeon slowly lowered his head. She just saved his life. The room changed. The nurse everyone had dismissed only minutes earlier suddenly became the person everyone watched. As Ethan was rushed toward surgery, Ranger refused to leave Emily's side. Outside the operating room, the hospital director finally asked the question that had been haunting everyone. "How did that dog know you?" Emily stared through the glass window at the unconscious captain. Years of carefully buried memories returned all at once. In another life, she said quietly, I trained military combat medics overseas. Ranger was still a young service dog then. Ethan and I served on the same humanitarian mission before he joined the SEAL teams. The hallway fell silent. You were military, the director whispered. Emily nodded. I never wanted anyone here to know. At that exact moment, the operating room doors burst open. A panicked anesthesiologist shouted. The captain's heart has stopped. Emily was already running before anyone else reacted. The instant Ranger saw it, everything changed. Emily crossed the operating room before anyone could stop her. The surgeons were already performing chest compressions while alarms screamed through the room. Ethan's heartbeat had disappeared from the monitor, and every passing second pushed him closer to death. Several doctors looked at the probationary nurse with disbelief as she stepped beside the operating table. I need 10 seconds, she said firmly. The chief surgeon hesitated, then nodded. Emily examined the monitor, studied Ethan's injuries, and remembered the same emergency she had faced years earlier during a combat evacuation. She pointed to the hidden fragment visible on the scan. That pressure has shifted. Stop compressions for 1 moment. Prepare suction. When I count to 3, remove the fragment exactly 2 centimeters and clamp immediately. The room obeyed. 1, 2, 3. The surgeon pulled the twisted metal free. Blood surged for a terrifying instant before the clamp locked into place. Then the monitor gave a single beep. Another, then another. A steady heartbeat filled the room. Nobody spoke. Several nurses exchanged stunned glances while the chief surgeon slowly smiled. He's back. Outside the operating room, Ranger lifted his head the instant the heartbeat returned. His tail wagged once before he settled quietly against the wall, as if he had known all along that Ethan would survive. Hours later, Ethan finally opened his eyes in intensive care. His first words were barely a whisper. Ranger. The German shepherd carefully approached the bed and rested his head beside Ethan's hand. The hardened seal smiled weakly before looking toward Emily. I thought I'd never see you again. Emily smiled through tears. You still owe me that coffee from 8 years ago. A faint laugh escaped Ethan despite the pain. The doctors and nurses watching from the doorway finally understood. The tattoo Ranger had recognized was the insignia of the Humanitarian Medical Task Force where Emily, Ethan, and the young military working dog had first served together. Ranger had never forgotten the medic who once saved both his handler and his own life during a mortar attack. The hospital director stepped forward. I owe you an apology. We judged you before we knew who you were. Emily shook her head. Rank, titles, and medals don't save lives. People do. Those words spread through the hospital faster than any official report. Days later, Ethan walked slowly through the rehabilitation wing with Ranger faithfully beside him. Doctors, nurses, and security officers paused to applaud as Emily passed by. She smiled politely, but her greatest reward wasn't the applause. It was seeing Ethan alive and Ranger finally at peace. Sometimes the strongest heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear hospital scrubs. And sometimes the truest acts of courage come from earning the trust of a loyal heart that refuses to give up on the person it loves. If this story reminded you that courage, loyalty, and compassion can change a life when hope seems lost, don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories.